Check, check.
I'll just do a quick intro. Welcome everyone to Actual Intelligence. So we're pretty much starting this so we can understand what's signal, what's noise in AI and crypto. It's obviously a really big trend. And today we're talking to Bittensor because they're changing the game. I'm sure you've heard people describe it as maybe AI mining and things like that, or decentralized intelligence, or maybe you've just heard of Tau. So we've got T-Slice here. Obviously, you're in the right place to learn more. So we're gonna slow it down, break it apart. We're gonna ask all the questions we can, so we can actually learn what's going on. We're here to learn, bringing in the experts like T-Slice, and we'll look at what Bittensor actually does. Because underneath it all, we're basically asking one big question: can you get people all over the world to build useful intelligence by rewarding them for good outputs and create basically what we understand as proof of intelligence, I think. So to help us make sense of it all, we've got someone who's been here for a while, longer than us, really, T-Slice, an OG, and one of the people we know that can talk about this with authority. So we'll just get into it. And T-Slice, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm T-Slice. I'm a builder in the crypto space generally for the last 4 years full-time. Background in EVM, smart contract projects, mainly around DeFi. We went through all the different waves, helping teams release products. And in the last year, I've created my own team and we're launching our own projects together. The flagship. So we've been focusing on agent tokens. About just over a year ago, we caught onto the agent wave. I was introduced to the founder of Creator Bid and introduced him to Bittensor and the Bittensor community and have been launching agents, which are basically apps, essentially, if you think about agents long enough, they're all apps powered by Bittensor. And then I found out about Bittensor just over 2 years ago. People call me an OG and this kind of thing. I don't really consider myself an OG because I've had the honor of meeting people who have been in the space longer than me or heard about it at the same time as me, but dove in, started building right away. I've continued with my EVM life, but then, like I said, just over a year ago, got back into it. And that's its own story because I'm all over the crypto space. I work with a robotics DAO timing network called Roco, and we wound up doing a hackathon with one of the first A100s on Bittensor to try and mine it. And that's how we got started. And I had been introduced to the co-founder Const prior to that through a friend of mine. So we wound up getting on a call with him and wound up contributing to BT solving some quality of life things there. And that was shortly before DTAO. And I don't know, I'm probably sharing too much right now, but basically the latest project is a subnet on Bittensor. I just mentioned BT DTAO, a subnet. These are all different things to do with the latest incarnations of Bittensor generally. So if we finish this talk with you understanding anything I just said, then it's a win. But I really want to preface that I'm just a builder in the space who's contributed and participated. And I'm happy to try and clear it up or just spread the word because Bittensor is the winning play in decentralized AI. Basically, there's nothing else. I sound like such a maxi, but if you ask people in the space and you ask any other projects that are trying to do things, or worst of all, they say they are doing things, they're not even, to quote another person's space, they're not even in the race. They're not even doing it. Bittensor is doing it. It's one of the fastest moving, fastest updating blockchains. And yeah, I look forward to demystifying, explaining it, all this stuff and unpacking it more. But yeah, I'm just a guy participating in the most cutting edge tech that exists in the world, as far as I'm concerned, decentralized AI layered with crypto. So I feel blessed and I'm just glad to be here. And yeah, happy to start wherever you guys want. I'm not usually the solo emissary. I'm usually with a panel or other builders or talking to Bittensor folks. So I'll try and keep it open. If somebody's never even heard of Bittensor, they hopefully will understand what I'm saying. But
Love it. Yeah. Well, in the future, we'll do panels and stuff too. We'd love to have you on. But yeah, for our sakes, even just imagine we don't know anything.
yeah,
Can I just jump in?
I do. I think you're massively underplaying yourself. I think that I've been lucky enough to have a couple of conversations with you, and I think you're firstly a very educated individual who really you know exactly what you're talking about, and you have an incredible amount of drive, which I respect hugely. And I think as well, there's not enough nice people in this space, and I think you're a very nice person. It's great to have you here, man.
Thank you.
One thing that I was curious about was that I'd heard the Tau token and Bittensor and never really dove deep into what it was. It could just be probably just my ignorance, to be honest. There's so many different projects that you try and keep tabs of, and you can't catch them all, right? As they say, it was only in the past sort of couple of months that I've been looking into Bittensor as a project, and it really hit me like, holy shit, this is huge. Would you consider them underrated and the whole ecosystem underrated and undervalued even now?
Absolutely. Of course. I think it's undervalued because I think it's ahead of its time. I think it had like Bittensor, other than being something that's a bit complex and tough for people to wrap their heads around sometimes, it's extremely powerful, but it also has a bit of a exposure issue. If you strictly look at a token being valued on speculation, right? If you find out about a token before other people do, that's a pretty strong speculative play if you think it's bullish, right? And for whatever reason, it's the algo, the internet of me. Bittensor people they're on crypto Bittensor, and we get each other's things and watch each other's things. And the trick is having it break out. And we have a lot of people, new people in the community over the past year that host podcasts, do different things that are getting the word out now. And so just from an exposure standpoint, I think it's undervalued. The other side that I think it's undervalued on is just, I mean, it's what we're heading into now societally. And without going into a full diatribe of what I think is going to happen in the world, you just look at when you started using something like ChatGPT, which is the first real accessible AI to the masses. I don't know if you've had the experience where you started using it and then you got rate limited or you didn't get access to it. And how all of a sudden you were like, oh my God, I'm totally reliant on this thing. I used it day one and it was like, they rate limited access. And I was like, oh, I don't even know I forgot how to even write a proposal. And it's been like 3 days I've been using the thing, right? I'm being facetious. Nothing worse than people saying no. Chat GPT. You gotta put something in there, but in my opinion. But anyways, I was really moved because when you think about intelligence as a commodity, which is a new idea in a way, intelligence a lot of times is expressed as like an ability to do something, right? And when we think about how all of our apps and software operating systems are going to become more like just AI, just engaging with AI, and how agents are going to be, AI agents are going to be doing all kinds of things for us. And that's all powered by intelligence, right? If everything in the world ends up being powered by AI, what price tag would you put on intelligence, right? Like when AI takes away jobs and earning money becomes a different kind of thing, what value would you put on a network like Bittensor? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to adapt. You need to move and adapt. Otherwise, you will sink. That's just the reality of the world in which we live in, and this new industry, which, let's face it, is essentially taking over. I was very curious there that you mentioned about the community aspect of Bittensor. We've seen it all in the past. Tech takes you obviously so far, and Bittensor specifically obviously has a tremendous infrastructure behind it in terms of technology and the general thesis of the ecosystem and whatnot. But we're talking about the community itself. That cult-like community essentially is what takes a project to a different stratosphere. Is that what you feel has been built right now in Bittensor in that community?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just to give some context to people about Bittensor, I'll say some things generally, but it'll make sense in a second. So just tokenomically, Bittensor is an incentive engine, right? And it has emissions just like Bitcoin, and it has matching tokenomic and happening approximately every 4 years, 21 million max supply in the end. And essentially the way Bittensor works is, instead of on Bitcoin, compared to Bitcoin miners, they process the ledger. They keep track of the transactions, right? And they seal the block and attach it, and they carry on. They do another block of transactions. A Bittensor is doing the same thing as a blockchain, but the miners on Bittensor aren't just doing that per se. What they're really doing is they're contributing compute. So that's why you hear this term like kind of proof of intelligence thrown around, whatever it is, or moreover, it's proof of useful work. That's what they say. There's proof of work with Bittensor, and there's proof of useful work. Not to say that maintaining the ledger on Bittensor isn't super important and useful, but that's the only use case. With Bittensor, and now with the DTAO upgrade that came out last February, it's just Bitcoin. Like I was saying, it's a network like that. But you know how Ethereum has smart contracts and tokens on it and this kind of thing? Bittensor has its own tokens as well. There's 128 of them, and it's one for each of the subnets, quote unquote. So the subnets are the projects on Bittensor, is the way to think about it. And you can register and you can buy one of the slots. And part of the incentive engine is they're always kicking whatever miner is performing the worst, or subnet, whatever is the worst performing subnet gets replaced by whoever wants to try a new subnet. And the reason why I brought this up is because theoretically, there's a few subnet teams that own multiple subnets, but for the most part, you can imagine it as 128 different teams or different projects or initiatives, problems that they're trying to solve using a subnet. So it's a pretty big community in that way, I would say, and a dedicated community. These tokens are not ones that you just spin up overnight. The community kind of self-polices too. They watch for any teams that are trying to take advantage of the system. They're just there to farm emissions as opposed to bringing something useful. But I can't recall your question exactly, but just as far as the community goes and the size of it and the brilliance that's in there, there's 128 of the biggest digital opportunities and problems being solved on Bittensor, and not all of them are even artificial intelligence specific. I'll just give you one example. There's a subnet called Hippias, and they do decentralized storage, right? So it's all these different sort of decentralized, distributed, powered solutions for different things.
Is that almost like Ocean Protocol?
I wouldn't be able to like completely compare them. I'd have to double check on Ocean. We use Ocean, but I think we use it for hosting. I think it's storage on my team, but that's a few degrees away from me. I pay the credit card bill for that one, but I don't know what that one does. But so anyways, it's a big community and it's really got a lot of genius people in it, and Bittensor can be used as a distributed incentive engine to really solve anything, because each of those subnets has a project or an owner, and the subnet owner sets up the code of the subnet, which determines the work the miners do, right? It's quite flexible as well. That's one of the other things that tells me Bittensor is really here to stay, because whatever the market is demanding from distributed compute solutions, subnets will simply either pivot or new subnets will come up that will do that thing. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. I'll probably get you to dive a little bit more into subnets in a moment, but I just wanted to bring it back and break it down into just first principles and just ask, what is the original problem Bittensor set out to solve? Why was Bittensor even created to begin with? What problem is it solving?
Oh, this is one for the co-founder of Bittensor, Const, like the white paper or whatever. But if you ask me, my understanding was to unlock the reality of distributed compute and what it could do, and also pricing intelligence, right? It's the intersection of crypto and intelligence. And I heard somebody say that there's intelligence in this crypto and there's basically like nothing else, because AI can essentially do anything. It can make everything, it can copy everything, it can do anything, but what it can't do is put Bitcoin in your wallet or put Tau in your wallet, right? That's why it's the first of its kind. It's the leader of that. And I'm not sure how to eloquently quantify what they were trying to achieve, but it's something along the lines of harnessing distributed intelligence, pricing distributed intelligence, and enabling it, because it didn't exist before. That's the thing. I just take it for granted. Oh yeah, distributed AI, whatever. No, it didn't exist. And it really only exists on Bittensor. Like pretty much every other thing out there is either just LARPing or renting GPUs, you know?
I think it's really interesting because we've had this conversation as a space throughout the past couple of weeks where we've asked ourselves the question, is Web3, is it really decentralized? You know what I mean? Like when you actually break it down, is it really decentralized, or is there a certain level of decentralization but ultimately it's controlled by governing bodies, etc., 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 all that. But speaking about Bittensor specifically, I think it embodies decentralization very well. I think that it's essentially bringing the power back to the people, rewarding builders who want to build, and essentially moving away from the big corps who have obviously the monopoly of the AI space. I think is really smart, a really great initiative.
Yeah, I mean, it's dreadfully important, because at its core, for me, I can only really speak from my perspective, but when I first got introduced to Bittensor by Const, which was a happy accident because a friend of mine happened to go to school with him and said, hey, I know a guy who made his own Bitcoin and it has AI. So I talked to him, and this is before I'd ever used ChatGPT, before it was even available. People were training models at the time. Jacob Steves walked me through Bittensor, and immediately I was like, oh my God, if AI is half as powerful as we expect it to be at the time, I'm like, number one, people need to be able to access it. It needs to be available to everyone, right? Because you can't, it's a necessity. You can't compete with somebody who doesn't have it. And that's one of the problems with centralized powers being the only arbiters of it. It's only a matter of time before they say who can have it or who gets a better one, or just jack the price up to $300, $600 a month, right? And then you'll see there'll be the people who have it or use the free stuff, and then there'll be the people who use the paid stuff. So access is something that is really important. And the other thing that's really important is models and LLMs, base models that are not biased, that don't lean one way politically, for example, or what have you, because AI is going to be so important in our daily life. Think about the term Google it, right? And how that's ruled our lives for however many decades, or I guess not that many decades, 20 years, 25 years, something like that. So Google it, but it's not going to be Google it. It's going to be something else, AI it or whatever. And AI, you prompt it, you don't know what's going on in there, right? And if everybody uses it for all those things, but it's loaded with all of these cultural biases and rigidness, that's like fall of Rome kind of shit, where it's like you decide things are a way and you just limit everything and there's no innovation. Like it'll be the downfall. We'll enter like an age of ignorance, and one we're just being manipulated all the time and all of this. So those are like the reasons why Bittensor is really important. And it's funny because with the latest incarnation of Bittensor, it's not just, it's a financialized, incentivized mechanism for harnessing intelligence and GPUs to do different jobs. But speaking to your thing about decentralization, right? Like the blockchain is decentralized, all this stuff. There's still a core team that is providing updates like Bitcoin. There's a Bitcoin core. There's a team that's providing updates. The chain itself is decentralized. And the other component that's decentralized is more so distributed, which is anything you want to do with your subnet, make that model or whatever it is. It gives you access to all the world's all the world's compute contributors that want to participate in the network. They can just plug into your subnet, start contributing essentially right away. But yeah, I'll shout out some subnets as I already have over the course of this call, but there's really like one particular set of subnets that I think is doing the real do because a lot of the subnets are also like financial plays or like business plays. So like, we know there's a value for this output. We're going to make the subnet do this thing, and we're going to vendor this thing. And prior to DTAO upgrade, before all the subnets had their own tokens, there was a lot more research happening. Now it's lit a fire under all the different subnets because they have the token. They need to preserve the price of that token. They need to move things forward. They need to have a business plan. They need to generate revenue. They need to do buybacks, all these things. The most important work being done on Bittensor is by one of those legacy research subnets. And now there's 3 subnets. It's called Covenant. Sam Dare distributed tensor is the custodian of all those subnets, the core contributor builder. Doesn't like me to say owner. But he runs these 3 subnets, and their entire thing is distributed. The first one is Templar, and that it's subnet 3, and that one literally all that subnet does is train an LLM, but it trains it over the internet. So again, we take things for granted. That's the first time that's ever happened. That's never happened before. All AI models before this were trained in a co-located data center, right? It's never been distributed. So they proved that was possible. And then also that they've made, and they're doing another run, and they're trying to catch up and compete with the frontier labs and make their own LLM, their own chat GPT effectively, to keep it simple. And for me, that's God's work. And that's the other 2 subnets essentially support that by providing compute and doing other things. But I just thought I'd plug that subnet and that team because that one's near and dear to me. And I really think that they're doing the work. They exemplify what Bittensor does.
Makes sense. Now, okay, so we've gone into subnet a little, and you shared about the projects that you like. You said there was 128 subnets, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
But so are they all independent projects with their own tokens? That's what a subnet is, and they all build off of each other? Or how does that work?
Great question. So yeah, they're all independent projects with their own token is the way to look at it. And it's a bit more complicated, but the token and the liquidity pools are the vehicles that the emission comes out of. So every block, new tau is created, and then also they call them alpha tokens. So the tokens for these subnets, they refer to them as alpha just because the first one is called alpha, the second one's called beta. They used Greek alphabet letters, but then they ran out of those letters and they used random other ancient language alphabet for the subnets. But the important thing to keep in mind is the only way to swap for these alpha tokens is with tau, right? So just like the early days of DeFi summer on Ethereum, where everything was paired exclusively with ETH, here everything is paired with tau. So if you want, as people find out about these subnets and stuff, which, like we're saying, that their own independent projects, they're all driving marketing. They're all trying to get attention. They're all trying to get out there. And then people are like, oh, I like the sounds of that subnet. I want to get exposure to it. How do I do that? Well, you got to get the alpha token. How do I get the alpha token? Well, first you got to get some tau, right? And then you get that, you swap that, you get the alpha. And what's cool is when you hold an alpha token, you actually get a piece of the emission that you would think would only go to the miners, but it goes to everybody who's participating with that alpha token. And simply by holding it as a staker, because technically under the hood, that's what's happening. Like when you swap for it, you're actually staking. It's complicated, but on the surface, it looks like you're buying the alpha token, but really that's your Tau that's staked, and the amount of your alpha balance effectively rebases. I don't know if you ever bought a rebasing token, but like the amount of the token you have actually goes up over time. And the yield on some of these subnets right now is, I wouldn't say the average, but they're about 180% yield on the alpha token right now. So there's a lot of reasons to get into them, but yeah,
anyone can spin up a subnet at any time. Is that right?
So there is a cap. There's 128 max subnets. Before it was going to be unlimited, but they found that the community needed time to catch up to the number of slots. So we didn't have 128 useful subnets. So they stopped. And also the more subnets there are, the more chain bloat there is. So they need to be mindful of a space on the blockchain, so to speak. So it's capped at 128. If you want to start a subnet, you basically just register it. You register, and if with the cap, basically there's subnet deregistration. Periodically, the system liquidates and kills the bottom performing subnet, the subnet with the lowest price, and then whoever is, as far as I understand, happening to register on the system when that happens, they will register and replace that subnet slot. But there's only 128. So I was pretty happy with my decision because I had a psychic hit back in the summer where I was like, that we hadn't reached 128 yet. We were at like 111, something like 112, 110 of that area. And I had a psychic hit where I was like, I want a subnet. Because I was using Bittensor, I was evangelizing Bittensor, I had meme agents, Michael Towler promoting Bittensor, sharing information, all this stuff. But I was like, I want a subnet. Something tells me it's really important to do that. So I wound up buying it with the help of Sam from Templar. And then shortly after, they said they were capping it. So I'm really happy that I did that, because it's not so easy. Like it's one command line in BT CLI, but you got to get the timing right. And it's different. It's different if you're registering now than before.
And I got one last question around the subnets. So you said the lowest performing one gets liquidated. Where does the liquidity go? Does everyone get refunded type thing, or does it get distributed amongst other subnets?
Okay. All right. So let's get into it. Okay. So and the thing is, Bittensor is the fastest moving blockchain. So whatever I say might be dated in no time, who knows? But my understanding, the way that it works right now, is when the subnet gets liquidated, what ends up happening is that all the Tau in the pool gets distributed proportionally to all the holders of the alpha token. That's essentially what happens. The registration fee gets lost. So when you register a subnet, if you go to taustats. Is it taustats.com or taustats.io? Taustats.io is where you can look at all the different subnets and what they're worth and all that stuff, right? And if you go to the subnets page and scroll to the bottom, you'll see which subnets are up for pruning, which is going to get deleted next. You also see how much people have paid for subnets. And the way that registering a subnet works is when somebody registers a subnet, whatever price they pay for it, the next person can register a subnet, but the price doubles. Okay. And then over time, the price drops until it reaches a point where people are willing to pay, and somebody hits that register command and pays the Tau. So right now, if I just look, the last subnet was registered yesterday, and they paid 270 Tau to register it. Tau's worth $300 ish, right?
31.
Yeah. And then what happens immediately after that is the price jumps up to whatever it is, 540, and then the price goes down day by day until another one gets registered. So if you go to taostat/subnets and you scroll down, you'll see this subnet registration chart for all the ambitious people who want to do that. And there's people in Bittensor who are making it more accessible. There's this program called BitStarter, started by Chris from Macrocosmos. They're a team of real OGs in the space. And basically, it's kind of like a dragon's den in a way, where people who are not Bittensor native, they have ideas for a subnet, they can actually apply to be featured, and they get consulted by a wide panel of experts, including the founder of Bittensor, and they get funding. It's like Kickstarter with consulting, and they're just doing their first subnet now. It's a new thing. So there's a lot of stuff happening to make it more accessible. And it's not just, hey, when you can do it, but hey, no, do you have something incredible that you want to build, or something that lends itself really well to the distributed compute model of Bittensor? Get in here. Let's help you do it. I think you were saying before, it's a really good community that way. You know, everybody, even though there's like intense competition and like everyone's fighting to stay alive and within the incentive mechanism in a way every day, or fighting for their place, any exposure to the network, you know, new people coming in the network is good for everybody.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it
Karen,
sounds
you-
like sorry, dude. It sounds like, which is going to be my next question, was in terms of adoption and how we see that, how we foresee that adoption and that grow in the ecosystem in the coming years. But you just made a really good point. Like, something like a Kickstarter is a really great initiative to really just make that sort of adoption way quicker. And I love that. I think that's how you get that huge amount of growth across the board. That's really cool. But yeah, going back to that, how big is it? It sounds like you're incredibly bullish on the whole project, on the whole community, on the whole ecosystem.
Yes.
It's a silly question, but how big can it get?
Everyone can talk shit, right? And I still value other forms of value, like Bitcoin, Boolean, whatever the heck. The cash is still useful, but again, it's intelligence. And with 128 different markets that could bring in participants, and the halvening is coming, it's like December. I don't want to misspeak here. And I say halvening because I'm like a degen, but it's halving is the way it is. It says it's 10 days from now. So in 10 days, the first Bittensor halving is going to happen. So I guess my answer back is, in a way, is what when we say how big is it? Are we talking what's the market cap potential? This kind of thing. If it's the market cap potential, I think it can be the most valuable thing on earth. Again, it's one of the very few things that actually prices intelligence, right? What else gives you exposure and to the value of intelligence in a way that can't be manipulated so easily? Because you can say, you could buy a stock for a company, right? You could buy a Microsoft stock or whatever it is, but that's not as direct of a correlation to the value of the intelligence. And also, it's a stock. It's just paper, right? It's not cryptographic. It's not immutable. When you combine those things, where you have the most valuable commodity on earth, the most valuable emerging commodity on earth, which is intelligence, and a crypto that denominates and values it, I can't put a price on it, honestly. All I could say is, on some level, I hope Bitcoin stays worth more, Bitcoin and Ethereum, because I think those two chains have their own roles. Bittensor just implemented a thing where it does have native smart contracts now. Bittensor does even have an EVM layer on it, although it's not being used very much. So it has features coming out that can rival, I wouldn't say Ethereum killer or whatever, but it's that kind of vibe, where not vibe, it's those kinds of features that people would say, oh, this is an Ethereum killer network, whatever, this kind of thing, because it has, and people just say that because it's a network that has smart contracts. So Bittensor has smart contracts now natively, but I don't know. Humans have a bias to what they're used to, and I've been around since 2017. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, definitely will stick around, and I would imagine seeing Tau right up there with them.
No, I think that was a really great answer. And yeah, I think you essentially hit the nail on the head with everything which you said. The sky sounds, and this, judging from what I've been doing my research over the past couple of weeks, probably a lot close to a month, just looking from the outside in, checking it out. And I really do think that it's an incredibly bullish project and ecosystem. And yeah, the fact that you're a founder there and one of the part of the community, I think is awesome, man. I think we say often you're early, but it sounds like you are early.
I don't know if you misspoke, but I'm not a founder. I didn't make Bittensor. I just build in it.
I meant like a founder of your own project there.
Yes.
Builder.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like my own subnet, it's not even directly like an artificial intelligence play. It's just me leveraging the miner competition model to do something, which is what every subnet is essentially doing, even the ones that are training AI. Because the way that the subnets work, just to give you like a bit of an idea under the hood, is there's 256 slots for people to mine your subnet. And depending on how you structure it and how ruthless you make the rules of your subnet for the competition, which actually directly translates into quality results. It's like the car dealership that they fire the guy who sells the worst every season. That car dealership's going to have the best sales. That's how Jim Pattison grew his empire or whatever, one of the millionaires out there or billionaires. And so going back to the subnets, each subnet has these miner slots and you can provide any competition to them. So the subnet that I own is called Minotaur. It's subnet 112, and it is a swap intent solver engine. So basically, if you're familiar with CowSwap or 1inch, you get better rates on those DEX aggregators theoretically, as opposed to going directly to Uniswap or SushiSwap or one of these DEXs that have their own liquidity pools. Because if you know about liquidity pools, the deeper it is, the less slippage you have. If you know which pool to use, you can save some money. If you batch transactions, you can save money on gas. This is what DEX aggregators do with like CowSwap and 1inch, and it allows them to pay themselves, pay the solvers, which are the people who map the routes for all the swaps that get submitted, and then it also allows them to give a little kickback to the users, so they get more tokens than they would have swapping their tokens on Uniswap, for example, right? So I thought this was really cool. I've been using DEX aggregators for a long time because the value they provide, but I also saw how much money they were making. And then being in Bittensor this long and just theorizing and philosophizing around how to utilize the technology, I was like, so when somebody submits a transaction to CowSwap and it gets bundled with other people doing transactions, and then has all these transactions that need to get solved or routed, there's these people called solvers, or these teams that literally compete for the best, most efficient route that has the most margin or excess savings, because it's the most efficient planning of those swap intents. And that one gets selected, and then that one gets to fulfill it, and that one gets paid. I was like, oh my God, let's get miners on a subnet doing that exact same competition. And not only will they earn the same that they would working, trying to fulfill swaps on CowSwap or 1inch, but we also have the Bittensor emission. So we can actually pay miners theoretically even better. And we have this support that none of the other DEX aggregators do. And also we're able to do it all essentially overnight. Once we put up the code, the solvers are there, and our startup costs are way lower compared to what these other companies had to do. And our burn rates are going to be lower compared to what they have. So that's how I'm using Bittensor right now with my team and Subnet 112 is to create a DEX aggregator, which the thesis is arguably have the most efficient routing for swap intents. And the net result of that is the best rates for swappers. So Bittensor is one of these things where it's like all or it's not, I wouldn't say all or nothing, but it's all. Because of the competition model, you actually can produce better results than centralized situations where people are more comfortable, right? Because miners are fighting to survive. They're some of the most insane, brilliant people, and scary sometimes people. We don't know who they all are because it's distributed, right? But they show up and they kick ass. There's another one that we have a project, an AI agent token called Hermes that's powered by Zeus, which is another subnet on Bittensor. And they, for example, outperform what their subnet does weather predictions. So you submit a weather prediction to the miners and they return a result. And simply because of the structure that I described being applied to solving that problem of weather prediction, they outperform all state-of-the-art weather prediction, whatever software intelligence by, I think, almost 20%. So literally Bittensor has the best weather prediction software, if you want to call it, in the world. And that's one subnet simply because, you know, the worst miner is going to get deregistered on their subnet kind of thing. So Bittensor can take over a lot more than just AI.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I was just saying that sounds super Darwinian.
Oh yes.
The best survives.
It's a crucible. It's like we're all gladiators here, for sure. As much as it's like a lovely community and everything, it's like some of the scrappiest fighters you'll ever meet. And they're all whip smart, so it's pretty crazy.
Nice. Good. Okay, now we touched on this a little bit. I think this will be one of my last questions, but you were talking about how miners interact with the subnet specifically, but how do miners interact with Tau as a whole? And like, from what I understand, there's validators as well, or like how is that infrastructure held up?
Yeah, good question. I've been keeping it simple and just talking about subnet owners and miners, but there's a third participant, let's say, which is the validators. So all the subnets also have validator slots, just like miner slots, and the validators come and actually in that matrix where the subnet owner creates the code, and that's the problem, the validators actually run that code and the miners participate in it. And usually there's a component where whatever useful work you're asking for the miners, before it gets accepted, or in the example of Minotaur, which miner gets the job to do is actually decided by the validators. So the validators are like the ones that check the useful work. And then as far as I understand, somehow between all of that secures they're securing the network as well there's actually 129 subnets because there's a subnet 0 and it's called root. And essentially that subnet kind of secures the network without it getting too technical. But Bittensor is going to continue to evolve. They're working on full-on proof of stake, which will eventually come one day as well.
And this is all just to create proof of intelligence, basically, at the end of the day.
Proof of useful work and
proof of useful work.
Valuing.
That's the term they use.
That I don't know if you've done some fresh research and you found that proof of intelligence somewhere. Maybe that's
no.
Yeah. But yeah,
that's what I'm calling it.
Okay, gotcha. Proof of intelligence. Yeah, it's more so proof of useful work, I would say.
Got it. Because it's not all AI. Okay.
Although that is what it's originally intended for. So it's funny. There's like even a cultural almost debate. Should subnets be used for anything other than AI? Does it make sense? And we're seeing what happens, because sometimes people make a subnet and it's something that you could just purchase a service for. You could just pay a SaaS or pay a subscription and get, or hire some people and do easily. that's not what you want that's not what you would get miners to do on a subnet. You want to get miners to do work on your subnet that you can't do, that you need them for, that you couldn't afford to do, or you couldn't just simply hire somebody to do. That makes a good thing for a subnet to do. And it might very well not be AI, but in the end, if it's on the internet, like the example of like digital storage or DEX aggregation swaps, remember what I said at the start? Like with agents and AI, they're going to be doing everything for us. There's going to be this whole layer of happening below, like underneath the fabric of the new human life. And that's going to be the internet. That's going to be the new internet, the computer world. So even if you make something and it's not on Bittensor and it's not an AI play, if it's something that can be accessed through an API, AI can use it.
And so from what I'm understanding now, you're basically competing for miners' attention between projects. So there's only 128 subnets, right? Or are you bringing on more miners?
Yeah, there's 128 subnets, and each one has its own set of seats for miners. So there is an element where you want to attract those miners. You need to make sure that your subnet price is high enough, and the way you have your mechanism set up, you're giving them enough of the emissions for them to justify coming and working on your subnet and covering their costs of doing that and turning a profit and all of that. Because it's a business for them too, right?
Yeah. So every subnet has its own kind of tokenomics structure.
Yeah.
Embedded inside of the Towler structure.
The Towler. Yeah. Towler's bullish on all of this.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Any questions from Cam or Zane?
Damn, dude, I'm gonna have to do a lot of reading after this. It's very complex. I think it has a lot to do probably with words. Like a lot of, like when you guys are talking about stuff, it's like a lot of the words, I don't even know what they mean. So for me to understand what you're saying, I need to understand what the words mean first, if that makes sense.
It's just Web3 vocabulary, dude. It's for context, Zane's relatively new into Web3, probably like 6 months or so, something like that. So you're familiarizing yourself. But I think this would be a great place to start because I can see a lot of alignment between what your interests are and what is being achieved over at Bittensor as well. So I think it could be cool for you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually was like, I don't remember if it was Grok or ChatGPT, but like a couple weeks ago or last month, I asked ChatGPT, I think, and I was like, is a decentralized AI even possible? Because obviously we talked about decentralization, the government and blah, 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 all that shit. So I was like, is it even possible to have a decentralized AI? And the first thing it said was Bittensor. It was like Bittensor, research Bittensor. And I was like, huh, interesting.
Nice.
And, yeah.
Honestly, that's good feedback, Zane, because one of the biggest things with all of the Bittensor evangelist people is we're trying to find ways to explain something simply that's very complicated. And if it's easy for us to take for granted certain terms and stuff. So it might be worthwhile. Yeah, I'll take that because that's helpful. It's okay. What when I say this word and defining it, that can make things a lot easier for people to ingest. But I also just take for granted how complicated it is because I live in it every day. So it's really so.
I think for mainstream adoption, and this is across the board, the whole tech board, I would say, but we'll focus on Web3 specifically. But there's a lot of, jargon and certain vocabulary which is used, and it's needed to be used in some instances, but it's very much, it can be easily explained to the mainstream retail non-tech specific people in other ways, which, like you just said, make everything way more simpler and easier to understand. And that way you can actually be really hyped and bullish about something because you actually know what they're trying to achieve, what the project's trying to achieve without overuse of certain vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing is, with Bittensor, I think, of course, I'm going to tell you it's worth looking into.
Nice. No, that's fair. It's interesting. Like Cam was saying as well, really quick, like just tech in general or Web3 even more specifically to have like mass adoption or whatever. I realized like a lot of people actually just don't know how a lot of even the tech they're using works, right? YouTube or anything. A lot of people don't really understand it. I was thinking like a lot of other tech, even the most basic like HTML, like down to the most bare bones, like early tech, people never really understood how it worked, even until today. Of course, not everybody. I'm talking about the general user base of the world. A lot of times, tech is adopted when there's tools built for them and they don't understand how the tech works, but they just want to use the tool, if that makes sense. So I feel like that's what I'm interested in. That's actually really genuinely, not even just for the space. That's really what I was interested in with Bittensor. I was like, is there something that I can make that can be used by general people, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that's what is happening now because the subnets are actually launching full on products now. They're forced out of this research place and they're launching full on products. And part of their game is to make products. It's a front end, it's a website, it's a subscription service, it's a front end. And they're designing these products in such a way that you do not need to know anything that we talked about for the last hour to participate. You don't need to know any of that. You just go to the website, put in your freaking credit card or submit some crypto and you get API credits and it lets you or whatever the product is, because there's ones that provide data, there's ones that provide compute. They're like when you come and use my subnet, it's going to be a swap interface. That's it.
Got you.
You don't even know.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. With the Data Universe subnet 13 from Macrocosmos, their subnet, they scrape data from all the social media sites, like namely Twitter and Reddit, and they repo all of it. They collect all of it. And you can, if you subscribe to their service, you can query that database. Or you can query for live data that's not even in the database yet from Twitter. And the miners will take your request and go get the data for you and serve it to you. But all you know is, okay, I go to whatever the website is for Dataverse, Gravity, whatever, and I make my request and I get my data. And then I can use that data to create whatever I would do with it. So like where your mind naturally went is the way. It's not about teaching people about I feel like it's not about teaching people about Bittensor first. It's about the best result is like people stumble across it, they find it in a matter of however long. We'll have lots of people who find out about Bittensor and they're like, oh shoot, I've been using Shoots to host my AI models. I didn't even know that was Bittensor.
Exactly, dude.
And then they go, wait, yeah, I want exposure. I'm going to buy some Tau price go up. All of this.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, I love that. That's exactly what I was saying. Like, I think a lot of tech, even Web3 in general, I feel like if that logic is applied, it's so much better. Like a lot of people, I have a bunch of friends who are like Web2 people and like creatives and stuff. And I was telling them, I was like, oh, I'm getting into Web3 and I've been doing creative work in this new field. And they're like, what even is that? What do you do? Of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum, people know those terms, flash words, decentralization, another buzzword, right? But what does it do? And I'm like, bro, I couldn't tell you at all what it does in a deep sense. And that's what I want to change with these types of spaces. I definitely learned something today, that's for sure, is that like how it works in terms of the not proof of intelligence, as Alejandro and I would call it, which is funny.
Like I don't want to shut that down. I kind of like that. Yeah.
It's funny. I think we're going to coin that term now. Proof of intelligence. But yeah, like proof of, what was it you said? Proof of useful work or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That I understood I have a much better understanding of that now today. Before this, I didn't have it, which is awesome. But yeah, man, thanks for dropping your knowledge. It was very useful for sure.
Nice. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. Mission accomplished. Thank you so much.
Educate the noob. 101, yeah.
The noobs, plural.
Anytime.
Love it. I just wanted to open up the floor now for T-Slice, for you to just share whatever you're working on, share whatever you want people to hear about. And also, if anyone has any questions in the audience, now's the time to raise your hand.
Okay. If you guys want to follow me, I'm at tsliceai. As you can see, you can find me easily in here. But my team, we operate under the banner Towler Labs. And our flagship product is an AI agent called Michael Towler. It's a tokenized agent on Base that was launched on Creator Bid Launchpad. So check out Towler Labs. We're also an incubator. So what we've done is we've launched other tokenized AI agents, which are like apps that are powered by the infrastructure of subnets. So kind of like we were saying before, like another way that people will be engaging with Bittensor and not even necessarily knowing it. They're like, oh, okay, I'm participating in the Hermes agent and it bets on prediction markets and I get exposure to that. Oh, wait, it's powered by the Zeus subnet. So we have the Hermes. We have another one we incubated called Rizzy, which is from the D-Search subnet, which actually does research for you on Twitter and this kind of thing. And then we've also done Schizo. Again, if you go to Towler Labs, you'll see them all. But Schizo is powered by TPN, Subnet 65, which is their miners provide VPNs. So you can get your VPN software from Bittensor. So Schizo is another way for people to access that. And we recently just migrated an agent from Virtuals to Creator Bid called Seraph, which is powered by Bitmind, another subnet. That one does deep fake detection. And we've migrated that to a new token called Truth, which is for a project we've shared very little details about called Truth Markets. And finally, outside of the tokens on Base, you can check out Minotaur subnet 112, which is the DEX aggregator engine, a swap intent engine that we're building on Bittensor. Just a few things you want to check out, but yeah, that's us. That's me, and we're builders. We don't really look at the market. We just keep going every single day. And we started Michael Towler over a year ago, and not many tokens even really last that long. So we're a team that's committed to quality, and yeah, Shill, that's me. I'm and my team. Come check us out, Towler Labs.
Awesome. Thanks so much, T-Slice. We appreciate having you here. Last chance, anyone on the panel here want to say anything?
No, that was awesome. That was really great. Hopefully the next space that we share, we'll be able to go even deeper into Bittensor and what's going on over there.
Love it. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, you guys. Happy to come back anytime. This is a good vibe. I like it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and catch us next week for the next space.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.